We only have B now, so I'll put that by voices. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. And we have the note there that the C be provided to the CCO governance and monitoring staff team.
We've taken C away, so.
Took C away.
Okay, so thank you, councillors.
We took C away, didn't we?
Yes, we've incorporated C into the
So we can't have that
1A.
note then.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, I mean, could I just request, I mean, that was a very long debate. I do think that sometimes one option that we can then change is better than trying to work through four.
Okay, thank you. We now move to item 11. Councillor Fletcher, are you going to move this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and in so doing,
5 minute break.
could I say that this work has been extensively considered by the Parks Committee. Aucklanders do treasure their open space, and with greater density, public space is even more important. Where we're at the moment is looking at the provision, but mindful of budget limitations and therefore prioritisations. So when we're thinking about parks, from pocket parks, neighbourhood parks, suburban parks, destination parks, civic spaces, etc., including connections like walkways and cycleways, we need to think about this for the future. So the funding options that are before you have been well considered. If you look at page 107 on the attachments, this is comprehensively documented there. I'm aware that officers are here to answer any questions that you might have on specifics, but I urge you to adopt these recommendations.
Thank you. I think it's been through the Parks Committee.
No, but we're not all on the Parks
extensively.
Committee.
Councillor Penrose seconded.
Yeah, second.
Is there any discussion? No. Or Councillor Clow?
Yes, I've got a question.
Oh, Councillor Clow's already seconded. Yes, Councillor.
I've just got a question, and that is how the present provision of open space under the contributions regime for, you know, a property in Auckland compares with the old regime, that is the 7.5%. So what are we looking at right now in percentage terms? Rob, is it around 1% or what, as compared to previously?
So if you're referring to the development contribution charge, councillors will be aware we currently have a flat rate development contribution charge for open space acquisition. There's 3 sub areas, and from memory that ranges from about 5,500 or thereabouts per unit for open space acquisition. Previous councils had various ways of doing that. Some had a percentage rate. So I think what Councillor Walker's suggesting, if you applied the legacy percentage rates to current land values, that would often be in excess of our current DC charge.
I know it's in excess, Rob, but what's the difference? I mean, if we're looking at, say, 7,000 on a 700,000 property, that's 1%. And I'm just trying to get where we're at now compared to where we used to be at, which was 7.5%. So is it about 1% that we're getting now?
So the difference, it depends entirely on what the land value is. So where you're buying very expensive land, 1% may be in the ballpark. In other areas where we're buying land that isn't that very expensive, we're at a higher level of percentage. It's very variable across the land we acquire.
But in the main, in many areas we're buying land at the expensive rate, in locations such as Hobsonville, elsewhere. So would we be looking at about 1% there, or less?
Without having done the calculations, I couldn't tell you what actual percentage it would be, but it's a relatively small percentage.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just put to you that it would be very useful for this council to inform itself.
Councillor Walker, does this relate to the policy?
Yes, it does.
Well, okay. Have you spoken to the officers before this meeting about this issue?
Yes, I have.
Well, and so you've got the answers?
No, I'm bringing this as a matter of some significance to your attention, Mr. Chair,
Well,
because
you're asking
we should be better informed as to the dire state of our reserve contributions.
Okay,
in
thank you.
terms of provisioning space for people to enjoy.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, I have to strongly disagree with one of the assumptions woven through this report, and that is that people would prefer better quality open space than more of it. In other words, let's not acquire more open space despite the population increasing. That goes against all past practice, and when you think about it, it's not especially logical. If open space is part of the quality of life, infrastructure and amenity of an urban area in a city like Auckland, convincing ourselves that, oh, well, we don't need to, we prefer to change what's been left to us rather than acquire more that relates to population growth, I think is a false assumption. But it relates, of course, leads on to broader questions about population growth and provision of infrastructure and the carrying capacity of the infrastructure, physical and open space infrastructure that we have. So I disagree with that point. And I think if we were to project from that, I think we could get ourselves into a lot of trouble. In terms of quality rather than quantity, I think the public view when it comes to parks or the council, I think they prefer the council to have more quality rather than more quantity rather than parks, but we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Casey.
Well, just to see if the word dog has been inserted anywhere in this open space provision policy, reflecting the 106,000 dogs of Auckland, most of whom use our parks of all sizes, day and daily, or is it still missing?
This is the same policy as was received by Parks and
So there's been
Recreation,
no
so there has
changes
been no
made.
change to
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Is it appropriate now to speak rather than ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, it's on the floor. You can speak.
Sure. I think my concern in principle is that we're increasingly entering dangerous territory in this council where effectively budget considerations drive policy. And what I see here is a circumstance where budget, that is the inadequacy of money to fund reserves, and that is money that is woefully inadequate because of the dire state of our contributions policy, is effectively boxing us into areas of policy that we really should not be going. And that follows on from the comments that Mr. Lee made, Mike Lee, which are apt. So this is a dire state, Mr. Chair, and I go back to the concern that I raised earlier, that we must revisit the contributions policy, because going forward, the Auckland that we are going to see is going to be nothing like the Auckland that we have been used to in terms of reserve areas for people to play, enjoy, recreate, for nature, for passive space.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, just because I'm not on the Parks Committee, I'm just questioning the reduction to 400 metres walkable area. I mean, in our last council in Waitaka, we increased that because it was just not affordable. It's just not affordable to be able to buy that many parks. But my other question is, or I suppose it's my thoughts around it, is does this apply to brownfields areas? Because there's an awful lot of development in brownfields areas as well. Is that going to be required as well in small-scale development? Are we going to have to retrofit existing developed places where there's small pockets of development, or is this just for greenfields? Because that's another issue that if you try to address that, it's never possible. We're setting up an expectation that can't happen.
Just let me try to answer.
So
Yeah.
of the two questions, the first is the reduction in the walking area. That came out through the testing and the feedback and the consultation, and that really reflects the increasing density that we are anticipating. So where you have, so we believe the greater walking distance, the 600 is appropriate for the traditional single house level of density. But where you're starting to get into the medium density and the backyards are disappearing and people don't have that access to open space, that an easier walking distance delivers both more accessible open space but also more open space for that greater number of people that are in those higher density areas. So that's the rationale behind the 400. In terms of fitting it back into brownfield, the policy is predicated on in the existing urban area where there is development and where there is a need and opportunity to acquire open space to meet these targets, we will take that opportunity. We need to recognise that that's not always very easy in the existing urban area, and often there isn't an opportunity to do it. So it's a balance of trying to meet these targets in brownfield areas and our ability to do so.
Just another question. I mean, I'm quite concerned about lots of little pocket parks because we know in the past we've got a lot of little pocket parks which are underutilised on poor sites. And if we're going to do it at no cost to us, is there going to be a quality control about what developers are saying, which bit you can have? Because we know that didn't work in the past. We had terrible bits of land that were either boggy in the winter, steep, you couldn't do anything with them. And then you have also an expectation from the community that then the council builds something on it rather than just being a piece of open space. So how is that going to be managed?
So the policy has some high-level criteria around pockets parks. So we're suggesting that we would look to accept those at no cost in higher density zones only, and some criteria around where they're located relative to other open spaces and relative to each other. And there's certainly always at council's discretion. So we would be saying no to the sort of low-quality open space that you are highlighting there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, Councillor Clow, Chris.
I just want to agree with Councillor Walker on the development contributions, but I disagree with his point about budget provisions, because I notice he's signed up to some group that's going to have their rates at 2% and slash the budgets and everything like that.
I think that was Watson.
How can you, it seems a contradiction to me.
Okay, well, I think that's
out of order, Mr. Chair, trying to bring the election campaign out of order.
Okay, with that, people, I'll put
Less on buildings,
order,
less on ourselves and more for the public.
order. I'll put the motion.
Quick, put the motion,
Councillor
Mr. Chair, hurry up.
question.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
No, just sit down.
No.
Sit down.
No, it's Watson that
Can
has.
we, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye,
Against? Declare that carried.
Excellent.
You didn't want to speak, did you? No.
outstanding.
Okay. We now move to
Excuse me,
item-
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm going to contact my union if we don't get a break soon. We've been here since 9:30. We haven't
unhealthy.
had
12:30.
a break.
Past 12.
Lunch
Past
at past
12. It's not too long. We'll just go through this next one, which is the alcohol.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Order.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I would like a retraction. Something was said about me that's not true.
Oh, we're going to have
And
to
I would
wind back a
suggest
lot
that
of
if
tapes.
Mr. Clow goes to the appropriate website or the like, he will find that is the case.
Okay, well, I think that's not a matter for
Mr.
this
Clow of the foe. Come
Thank
on,
you,
Wayne,
thank
get
you,
with
Mayor.
it.
Can we,
Sorry, I just have to clear an interest on 11 and 13 as well, thank you.
okay,
Well,
so
you're leaving.
is Councillor Casey
right
now,
time.
she's gone off to... Okay, we'll go to 11. 11. And we have the, bring up the motion,
Excellently chaired, Mr. Chairman.
can we bring up the, what we've got there? We're just bringing up the motion. So this went to the Community Development and Safety Committee yesterday, and they've got some recommendations here which we've accepted. We've put them into the motion. So unless anyone's got anything to say on this, I'm going to move it, seconded by Councillor Anai. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye,
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you.
carried on one voice. Well done, team.
No, okay.
Yes. Proof that it's a dictatorship.
That's right.
Dictatorship is live and well.
Can we go to item 12, which is this from the Arts, Culture and Events Committee. I love this. It's requesting the staff undertake analysis and report to the committee or relevant committee on the recommended position on the industry-led application to join United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, Creative Cities Network within the creative field of music. Okay, I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Darby. Any discussion? I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried.
No.
No.
Lost
Okay.
on voices.
No, it's carried on voices.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not my
Okay,
vote
vote.
now recorded.
Vote
Vote
recorded.
against it.